Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Professor Rich, and today we're going to be talking about real English versus textbook English. And I'm going to try and get some people on, and we'll have a chat about that. We'll have a talk with some English learners and see what they have to say about these rather interesting topics. I think once you get to a certain level of English study, then you realize that textbook English and real English are a little bit different, depending, of course, on the textbook. And, of course, the very topic of real English is rather complicated. So I'd like to start us off here with a little thing to talk about, which is what's the most confusing real English phrase you've heard? I think a lot of learners have had that experience where you sort of learn how things should be said, and then later on you get to the point of realizing that the way people really say stuff can be a little bit different to how it is in the textbook. So we're going to start off by talking a little bit about that. So have a think. What is the most confusing real English phrase that you've heard? Do you sometimes find it quite unusual the way that people say real English? And I'll give you an example in just a moment, an example that people often find a little bit peculiar. So current topic is, what's the most confusing real English phrase you've heard? Have a think about that. And I'll show you one that often confuses people quite a bit, actually. And that is, what's your friend like? Have you ever come across this? What's your friend like? It can also say stuff like, what's your job like? What's it like? What's France like? And I guess what's confusing about this is people look at the word like and they think that like is a verb here. And they think we're talking about likes and dislikes. Actually, we're not. The word like here is actually not a verb. The verb form is actually be like. It's a phrasal verb. And we use it actually to mean how, but not in the sense of temporary characteristics, but how in the sense of permanent qualities. So when I say, what's your job like? I'm basically saying, tell me about your job. Or what's France like? I'm saying, tell me about France. What's it like? Tell me about it. So when you hear someone say, what's it like? That phrase actually means, tell me about it. So that's a little example there of some confusing English. Right, let's have a go. Let's get someone on here and see what you guys have to say about this. So we'll jump in. And Sonia, are you ready? I'm going to pull you in and say hello. Make sure that you mute the stream, because otherwise you will get an echo, all right? So are you ready? I'm going to bring you in, Sonia. Make sure that you mute the stream. Otherwise, you'll probably get an echo unless you're on headphones. You'll at least hear me twice. But all right, let's bring in Sonia. Hello there, Sonia Butterini. You're live on the internet. How are you doing?
Pretty well, thank you. And you?
Oh, good answer. Yeah, I'm not too bad, Sonia. Is this the first time that we've spoke, Sonia? I'm not sure if I spoke to you previously.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, it's good to speak to you finally, because I know that you're a long-term subscriber and watcher of the channel. So why don't you tell us, what do you think about this, Sonia? If you can, what's the most confusing real English phrase you've heard? Or in general, what things do you find confusing about real English compared to English in course books?
I agree with you about the what's your friend like or your life like. It's quite confusing for Italians.
Actually, I think that a lot of language learners find that one quite unusual. I don't think there's a good direct translation in any language that I've come across, particularly because the form is so different that when you say, like, what's it like? The closest I think in Latin language is something like, I don't know Italian, but in Spanish they'd say como es, how is it? And in English, when they say como es, we say what's it like? And when they say como está, we say how is it? Right? So it's like that kind of idea of how is it, but in a more permanent sense rather than a temporary sense. Have you ever been confused talking to a native speaker with some language that they use? Oh, I think we may have lost Sonia, unfortunately. Well, that was nice talking to you, Sonia. Feel free to come back and we'll get you on again. Should we pull in Mr. Gordillo in the meantime? He usually has quite a lot to say. So I'm going to bring you in, Manuel. You will have to mute the stream. Here he is.
Hello, Rich.
Yes, I can hear you, Manuel. Have you muted the stream?
Fantastic. Fantastic. And now I am going to disconnect. Yes. Yeah. Just a moment. Just a moment, please. Question, Rich.
Yeah, well, I wanted to know, Manuel, have you ever found that real English is more confusing than the English in textbooks? And what's your experience with that?
Well, really, good morning for all the people, all my peer. Good morning for you as well. The question is, Rich, not say French. It's like an idiom. Idiom. I have no problem with understand the even complex phrase. Never have no problem. The question is, I have problem with the idiom. For example, one of them
Idioms.
is throw the baby with the bath water. Although time ago you try to explain me, I can catch the feeling or the meaning from the phrase. Okay, fantastic. You see, the rest I can understand perfectly, even complex paragraphs. The question is really slowly and by part. If you don't understand, in my opinion, a paragraph, you need to read by parts. And then you can understand the paragraph. I have no problem with the paragraph.
Well, of course, the definition of an idiom in terms of an idiomatic phrase is actually a phrase which has a different meaning to the meaning of the individual words. So actually, it's essentially, by definition, it's quite difficult to know what is the meaning of an idiom by looking at the meaning of the individual words. So it makes sense that you'd find that confusing. So what? Did you get that? Did you get that, Manuel?
No. If you want, I would like keep a low profile in order to give the opportunity for the other pair, and the other pair are a little became blank. You can give me the opportunity that come back to the meeting. Okay.
Well, it's just you at the moment, Manuel. Sonia's kind of coming and going, but Yeah,
Fantastic.
absolutely. Someone else will jump in, but it's good to hear your opinion. So, Manuel, for you, it's idioms. All right, let's drop you out for the moment, and you can come back a little bit later. All right. So, Manuel was talking about idiomatic phrases and idioms and saying that they are a little bit difficult to work out. And as I said, by definition, that's the case. When we say that something is idiomatic actually by definition, it means that the phrase has a different meaning than the literal meaning of the component parts. Hello there to Pavia in the chat. Do you want to jump on, Pavia? I've got a live call and I'm having people on. We're talking about the differences between real English and textbook English. And I'm going to move us on actually to the next conversation here. So the next question that I'd like to talk about is this one. Have you ever experienced a lost in translation moment? Now it says in the UK, although I realize most of you are not actually in the UK. So let's just leave it at this. Have you ever experienced a lost in translation moment? So have you ever communicated with someone in English and had this experience of lost in translation, meaning that when you try to translate what they said into your language, it just doesn't seem to make a great deal of sense? And that's the kind of experience which obviously language learners have. One of the things that we have to learn as language learners is that we have to actually learn to be really good communicators. That really comes as part and parcel of being a language learner. It's important that you can learn to be a good communicator in terms of charitably trying to understand what the person's saying, and also getting quite a good idea of the context and so on, in order to try and deduce the meaning, because you can't always rely on simply the words that someone uses. So you're looking at the whole frame of what's being talked about, because of course that will give you clues. So the background of the conversation and the kind of intonation and of course body language which someone is using. Body language, in fact, can be very useful when you have a lost in translation moment. So have you ever experienced a lost in translation moment, and what do you have to say about that? We will have someone on in just a moment. Razlan, I don't think I've come across you before, sir. Should we have a talk to Razlan? A bit of a risk because I don't know who you are. Are you in the chat, Razlan? Can you say hello so I know who you are? We need to have a certain degree of, oh, there he is. Hey, hello. All right, then. Let's see what this chap has to say. Don't think I've spoken to you before. Remember to mute the stream, Razlan, otherwise you'll probably get echo. Hello, Razlan. You're live on the internet. How are you doing?
Hi, hello.
Hello there. So, what do you have to say about this idea of a lost in translation moment?
Well, speaking of, sorry, I just need a second to put my, like AirPods so that I can hear you.
Of course, and probably
yeah.
mute the stream as well.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
just
you'll hear
a
me
sec,
twice.
okay? Do you hear me right now?
Yes, I can hear you very well, actually.
Well, I'm able.
I can hear you very well. If you can hear me, then we're good. You know, whenever I try these live things, this is the kind of thing we have.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Hello,
Yeah.
Razlan.
Hello, hi, how are you?
Great. So, a lost in translation moment. Is that something
Well,
you've experienced?
yeah, I remember that I was with my friends, like sitting and like in our language, we use actually some kind of this idiomatic things, but in English actually, and as an English language learner student, like we have, for example, speaking of the devil or something like that, when you want to mention someone and he suddenly show up,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe like I smell a rat, you know, it was like kind of a very funny, when you translate it into especially into my mother tongue language, and like and also a lot of idiomatic things like I've faced. But this is speaking of the devil was the most interesting one because it's kind of, how can I say, funny if you translate it into the language that I speak. So yeah.
Yeah, that is a funny one. This comes from the idea that when there was sort of a what do you call it? A sort of a folk belief that if you talk about the devil, then it attracts his attention. And so the kind of the tradition was you don't talk about the devil because if you talk about the devil, he appears, right? And so that's where this idea came from that when you talk about someone else and then they appear, it's like speak of the devil. It's like, oh, we were just talking about you.
Exactly. By the way, I speak Arabic,
Oh yeah.
and especially the Arabic language, when you translate it, this special idiom, it was really like, funny. Like, I mean, for example, we have also like, don't sell me a dog, for example. Don't sell
Don't
me
sell
a
me a
dog.
dog. Is that?
Like, don't lie or something,
Mm.
But in the language, like, don't sell me a dog. Like, what? So yeah. Yeah.
That's an Arabic
And
expression,
also,
is it?
yeah, by the way, also, because I'm a Syrian, by the way. I'm from Syria, and I've been living in Turkey for almost 10 years or something. So we have been forced, to learn Turkish and English, or both,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very
So,
interesting. Yeah, in my recent job, I had lots of Syrians in my class. Actually, I was teaching
oh,
ESOL in the UK. A couple of Turks as well, but not so many. But more Syrians. Yeah, plenty of Syrians. Very nice
that's
chaps.
that's interesting. And I'm studying right now in the university computer engineering, So, and my
Oh,
department
great.
is 100% in English. So I also attend SAT exam, if you know it or something, and this is an American
Yes,
exam.
yes,
Yeah,
it's an American exam. Yes.
exactly.
Out,
So we have been forced, to learn English in the fastest way in the world. Like, I've been speaking English just for 4 months or maybe 5 months.
oh, really?
That's all.
You're quite
That's
young, though, aren't you?
what?
You're quite young.
I'm 20 years old.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're still relatively young as a language learner, and that does help. It's still very
Yeah.
challenging in your 20s. I learned my first second language when I was 28. That was Spanish, and it was very challenging. But that's fantastic. Are there any particular words or phrases in English that you find difficult to use correctly?
Words like, for
Just
example,
any particular words that you're just not quite sure how to use it correctly, or you just find it a bit weird the way that we use them, or a bit difficult to use?
um, like for example, we have like keen. So sometimes, like we need to put the words, and then when we have a prepositions, we need to put after the words.
Yes.
Or yeah, for example, keen. I think the word keen is like very eager
Keen.
or something. I think
That's a good
it is
definition.
keen on something, or keen at, or keen in. It's kind
Yeah.
of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sometimes.
the thing about prepositions is they are most of the time they are quite arbitrary. In other words, there is not really any particular reason for a preposition. That's just the preposition. So the preposition with keen is actually keen on, and it basically is always keen on. Can't think of another sort of common one that I would use. But yeah, keen on. And why do we say on instead of at or in? Actually, there's no good reason for that. It's just the way it is. And actually, you find that in a lot of languages with prepositions, that prepositions, although they seem to have meaning when you look at them on their own, when you actually look at the verbs that they're used with, they tend to just be arbitrary, based on convention, which is how languages are formed, actually, on convention.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also there is a phrase which is like, don't butter me up or something.
Okay, yeah, we're going back to idioms. Don't butter me
I'm
up.
not sure if this is it correct? Is this
Yeah,
again
it is
correct?
correct. Yeah, don't butter me
Yeah.
up. I mean,
But this
actually,
video actually I have learned it tomorrow. Sorry, today morning. So that's why I'm not sure.
oh, well done.
100%.
See,
Yeah.
you're obviously quite a good language learner. If you've only actually been speaking English for 4 months, I mean, I would say you must have had some reasonable exposure to English before that, given your current
Well,
level.
the idea is that I don't know if here also I would like to share my strategy for all the learners. The best thing that I have tried. Also all the teachers and all the professors, they recommend it, but it's kind to seem kind of hard, not for all the people to do that. The idea is that I just stand in front of a mirror, okay, alone in the room, and I start to talk to myself, like imagining there is a person, like in front of me is a native speaker, and I try to speak. So whenever you see me at home, like kind of like a crazy person, like I'm just talking to himself in that language that he's learning. So
No,
that's
but
actually what really helped me.
this is a genuine technique. Imaginary conversations, and there's different ways you can do this. It still actually has some benefits, even if you just do it in your head. And I used to have a student many years ago. Actually, it was when I first noticed this as a useful strategy, and she used to imagine herself talking to Johnny Depp. As you can tell, this was some years ago when Johnny Depp was a bit younger. She used to have many imaginary conversations with him in English, and it really helped her fluency. That is actually a fluency based practice activity, because you are formulating the English in your head and you're practicing doing that. So that does actually improve your fluency.
Well, also there is a second one, actually. It's maybe not that common, it's because it's not that easy, I mean, to do it. That's why is that whenever you see any YouTube channel or YouTube video, okay, someone, a teacher, like whatever it is explaining, you just copy the link of the video and go to the Google and generating a transcript and get that transcript, and then read it, okay, by recording yourself or whatever you want, like you are pretending that person, okay, pretending that you are the person and reading it. You got me, like what I mean. It's kind of I don't know, but that's what
do you listen to the video first?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
First, you need to listen to the video maybe twice or something. Then actually we can get the transcript and read it, like by ourselves, so that we can imagine that we are the person in the video that is describing the things.
Yeah,
so that's also I would really recommend to the language learning students.
Yeah, these are actually quite advanced techniques. They don't work for everyone, but they're the kind of things that polyglots use. So they are the kind of techniques that people who learn many languages use. The one you're talking about there is most like something called shadowing, and what I would call it in the way you're doing it is I'd call it delayed shadowing, because with standard shadowing you listen to like 10 seconds, pause the video, and then you basically try to say what that person just said, focusing on the sounds. That's really the big deal, that you really focus on the sounds, because when you focus on the words, you start to say them kind of in your own way. But when you focus on the sounds, you realize that the sounds that this person uses are actually different than the way that you would say those words.
Exactly.
All right, fantastic.
So yeah. Well, I will not actually, catch you. I know maybe there are some persons, they have the right maybe to join.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to speak to you, Razlan. I'm very interested.
Really, it was kind of coincidence. I just was searching for a podcast in English, and then suddenly appeared your channel, and I enter it, and I just send, like joining request, like,
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
yeah,
You're
like,
a fresh viewer. Fantastic. Well, welcome.
yeah,
We have a
and
pretty
from time
good.
to time, I don't know if you continue this, we can, of course, like, we can join and share a lot of things, like.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, I'm thinking about it. I live stream normally on Saturdays, but I thought I would do an impromptu little chat show today. Anyway, it was a pleasure talking to you. Have a lovely day, Razlan, and see you around.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, folks, that was Razlan. So lovely American accent that Razlan is developing there, by the way, I would notice, which is appropriate if that's the standard of English used in his educational institution. So, folks, who else would like to jump in? If you'd like to jump in, then just jump onto the link there in the pinned comment at the top, and you can jump on and we'll have a little chat about this. We're talking about the differences in real English compared to textbooks, and I thought it was quite interesting there to hear some of Razlan's suggestions. And as I said, these are advanced suggestions, and you guys have probably heard me talk about these before, actually, not quite the same way with all of the details of how Razlan was doing it, but imaginary conversations for certain is a great fluency-based practice activity. And shadowing is, it's basically the number one way of improving natural pronunciation and connected speech, with the idea being that you listen to something, you really focus on the sounds, and then you try to produce those sounds naturally when you speak. And the idea there is that it takes you away from the kind of imaginary idea that you have in your head about how English sounds, and then it moves you towards the way that people are really speaking. And it's often the case that for language learners, they go through a stage of realizing that the English in their head sounds different than the way that people really use English. And I noticed this myself when I was learning Spanish, and it was probably about the third or fourth year of learning Spanish that I actually realized the way that I was particularly saying phrases was very different than the way Spanish people were saying phrases. One of the things that really caught me off guard with that is that when I started learning Spanish, people often told me that Spanish is very phonemic. In other words, the written sounds corresponded very closely to the spoken sounds, or the written words, the written letters corresponded very closely to the spoken sounds. And I just accepted that. I just thought, yeah, that's the way it is, but then years later, I start to listen to the way people speak, and I noticed, wait a minute, actually, they're not. It's not, when you say, you don't say this is the example I always use, right? La verdad es que, right? So if we say all of the letters, la verdad es que, right? It's like that. But when Spanish people say this, they don't say it like that. They normally say, la verdad que, la verdad que, la verdad que. Where did the s go? S-K? No, it's not there. La verdad que, la verdad que. So when you start to notice that, the sounds in connected and natural speech actually are different than what you think or what you imagined, then it really starts to help your fluency. So let's have a little think about this. Here's a good question, little question to consider as we move on here. Question to consider: Have you noticed grammar rules being broken in everyday English? This is a real bugbear for language learners, isn't it? And actually, native speakers complain about this sometimes. The experience of having a non-native tell them, hey, your grammar isn't correct. How to not make friends with a native speaker in 5 seconds. Tell them that what they just said doesn't actually fit the grammar rules of English. And that can be quite an interesting experience for both the native learner and the native speaker and the non-native learner, that they realize that the native English speakers don't always seem to follow the grammar rules as we would expect. I wonder if we could have some examples of this, of grammar rules being broken. It's a shame, actually, that Sylvia has left, because she was great for that. So I used to have classes with Sylvia, and in the class, she would tell me that my English isn't right. I was giving her a class, and she would say to me, yeah, I'm sorry, teacher, but actually you're using the wrong preposition there. I was taught by Michael Swan that actually there's a different preposition to be used here. She had some very famous English teachers in the 80s, and I think it was the 80s. And so she spoke with a bit of authority on the subject, which was quite interesting. We're going to have Pavia on. Just remember to mute the stream, Pavia, otherwise you'll probably get an echo.
Yes.
Here we are. I haven't spoke to you in a while, Pavia. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Rich. I hope you're doing great too.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well at the moment, actually. Doing a little bit better than before. So what do you think about all this, Pavia? What experiences have you had when comparing the English taught in a traditional classroom compared to the real English that you experience in the world?
Actually, we are talking about grammar rules, right?
Well, now we're talking about grammar rules, but really anything you have to say on the subject.
Okay. Currently, I have to talk about the grammar rules, so I'll go with that.
So have you noticed any particular instances of grammar rules of English speakers using grammar that doesn't seem to agree with the rules that you taught?
Yeah. What I have to say is that grammar rules always get broken all the time in real English, especially when it comes to conversations. Have you ever heard someone say, "Me and my friends went to the mall"?
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So technically, this grammar books will scream that no, it should be like "my friends and I," right?
Mm-hmm.
But in real life, almost everyone says "me and my friends," and no one even blinks.
Yeah, and that's a really good example, and that's one that people have been talking about since the early 90s. And it's one of the things which I think these days everyone would actually consider, not everyone, that's the wrong thing to say, but most people would accept that "me and my friends" is actually grammatically correct because it's what people use. Whereas in the past, they would have said, oh, people use it incorrectly. So people actually speak wrong is the way that they would say it in the past. They'd say, no, this isn't correct to say "me and my friends." It should be "my friends and I." However, these days, I do think that even if you speak to an Oxford professor about grammar, they would accept that "me and my friends" is an acceptable, correct way of using spoken English.
Oh yeah, sure. And again, we have this example. Ain't nobody got time for that. That's a double negative, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And that sentence is kind of iconic now because it's catchy, expressive, and makes points better than a boring "nobody has time for that."
Well, that's a little bit different, but it's a very interesting one. This idea of "ain't nobody got time for that," because this is one where it actually depends a lot on where the speaker is from, whether they are likely to ever say that or not. And the association I'm getting with this is United States. And I think in particular, the famous variety of English where you would see something like this is African-American variety English, which is actually the most studied variety of English in terms of academic studies. So more than any other standard variety of English, African American variety English is the most studied because it has very kind of interesting social, cultural connotations, because you have these people who don't have a particular geographical link. They're from all over the United States, but there are common features of the way they talk. And one of them would be something like that, like ain't nobody got time for that. We've got the double negative. We've also got this ain't, which is quite unusual and interesting, something that in British English you probably won't see quite so much. So what do you think about this idea of particularly difficult English words or phrases to use? Are there any particular words that you find challenging to use in the right way, Pavia? Or maybe in the past there were some words that you found particularly difficult to use correctly?
Yes. Recently, I've been listening to a podcast, and I don't know whether you know this person. I've mentioned him before. He's Shashi Tharoor. Shashi Tharoor. He's actually a great Englishman. I don't know whether you have.
Can you say the guy's name again? I'm not quite catching it.
Shashi Tharoor. He's an Indian, and he's kind of famous because he's an Englishman. And
Okay.
there's no yeah. And actually, I've been hearing to a podcast, and in that, he's been making some of what to say, and these words were kind of interesting. Means the words were like hippopotamus versus phobia, and all those big words, you know.
Did anyone else in the chat catch what Pavia said there? That was a fancy word.
And I don't know whether people use that in daily conversation because it's kind of weird. And again, there's another one like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And then there's another one which is pneumonological microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. And those kinds of words.
Yeah, I mean,
those kinds of words are fine.
Yeah, those kind of words are kind of curiosities, aren't they? Curiosities. As in, we get these kind of super long, weird words, which, quite specific use. But you know, I think probably the main place where people would come out with those would be at a party, in terms of a party trick to say, hey, do you know this word? I remember one that was very popular actually in the early 2000s. Was the train station name in Wales. It's the longest train station name in the United Kingdom. And if you have someone who's from Wales, they can normally say it. And it's quite entertaining to hear them say it because they say it kind of in the Welsh accent correctly. And it sounds quite peculiar. It's super long, basically a super long place name with a Welsh accent. So it's that kind of idea, isn't it, of saying like, hey, listen to these really long words. Fun to play around with and perhaps useful for pronunciation, but probably not particularly useful in everyday conversation.
Sure. And also, then we talked about some of the words like snolly buster, slobberactory, and all those things. I don't know whether people use that in this daily conversation or not. Or maybe it is fascinating when it comes to novels or just.
You're a bit far away from the microphone now, Pavia, so I didn't quite catch that. Did you say filibuster?
Can you hear me now?
Not too bad. Quite a lot of echo.
Now, it's okay.
It's not too bad. So what was the word you were saying?
Snolly buster. Snolly buster.
Yeah, I'm not. You might have to type that one in the chat 'cause I'm not quite catching it. I'm gonna bring on Zoya, Pavia. It's a pleasure to speak to you again. Hope you're having a lovely day, and catch you again soon.
Okay.
All right. See you later, Pavia. Hello, Zoya. You're on. Just mute the stream, otherwise you'll get an echo.
Hi, Rich. Do you hear me well?
Very
is it
well.
okay?
Yeah, very
Okay,
very
so
clear.
I I have just by surprise caught you on now, and I'm quite excited about the topic because I'm personally a little bit getting into the nitty gritties and enjoying the nuances of the English language as I've been doing lots of advanced exercises. And what I am really being a little bit frustrated about is the phrasal verbs. For instance, I was doing where you have to put one word. Let's say one word is missing and you have to put it. So I have this text where it says, let's say something like the context is, don't pile this stress on me, pile. And I think, well, pile up is the right preposition. I'm 100% sure about that. And then I do pile up, and it's wrong.
Yeah.
Pile on is
Pile
the right
on.
preposition. And
Yeah.
I'm like, why? I get into it as I start studying, and I find out that pile up is when something piles up gradually, but pile on is when something is piled on you really suddenly and with a lot of stress. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, okay.
Yeah, so pile up is the idea that you're like building a tower, and you
Yeah,
put on the next one and the next one,
gradually.
and you're piling it up. Well, perhaps gradually, yeah. I guess there is a little sense of gradually, but it's more the idea that it's this tower over there, and I'm building it. Whereas pile on, the reason it's pile on is because it's on me. So it's like you're putting the thing on me, so it's on top of me, and that's the sense that's going on there. That's extremely difficult stuff, Zoya.
As you can imagine, if I hit it right, I'm so overjoyed. You see, okay, for instance, a tram can glide around a small picturesque town, but a bird will glide over the sea. It's like all of this, and I'm like, wow, okay. And then another one I can just comes to my mind right now is like something about our love. Will our love thin as time goes on? And I'm like, will our love, I guess, get thinner as time get thinner? And I write get thinner, and it's not correct. Where will our love wear thinner as time goes on?
Wow.
All this kind of little small
I'm not sure I would have got
things,
that one.
but it's quite exciting, and I'm getting a lot of frustration, but at the same time fun, because I think I'm learning a lot.
I think for the context here, Zoya, it's important to say that you're studying proficiency, so that's why you're kind
I'm
of
doing C2.
you're getting
I'm
into
doing C2 material, C2 exercises, and I'm finding it quite challenging. But I love challenges, so I'm going on for it.
Yeah, and those are exactly the kind of things that you have to get into when you're studying specifically proficiency. C2 is one thing, you know, C2. All kinds of people take C2 exams and say they've got C2 and all the rest of it. But the Cambridge Proficiency is a very, very, very kind of difficult and comprehensive exam. And so, yeah, absolutely, you need to really understand these things. And particularly, you know, what you were just saying there about, our love wears thin. I'm not sure, that one it didn't come to me until you said the answer. So, I would have found that a little bit difficult myself. And I remember speaking to a teacher who was a specialist in Cambridge Proficiency about this, and he always liked to use the word synthetic. He said proficiency is really, it's a synthetic level, as in it's a level of the language which is beyond that which any kind of competent user would naturally get. You can only get a level of proficiency with intense study, which I think is what you're doing, isn't it?
Yes. And basically, I agree with you that it's quite synthetic, and basically C1 will do in any kind of field concerning English. But I'm a little bit, this is my kind of nature. I'm a little bit of, have maximalistic trait in my personality. So I'm thinking of what's the purpose of training and preparing for C1 and then doing the same for C2. I jumped on to the highest and most difficult. But, I'm not pressured by time. So I have time and I'm enjoying myself.
Well, there are many benefits to it as well. I mean, especially if it's something that you're interested in. I mean, it does make you an expert in the language when you get to that level, but also it's incredibly good for your mind. If we consider things like neuroplasticity and things like that, doing something like a
I
C2
tell you,
qualification
my
is great.
mind is burning. I'm just like, it makes my head spin around. I'm just like, wow. It really makes your mind work.
Well, that goes to the famous quote by Plutarch, that the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. In other words,
Yes,
the more that we feed the fire,
exactly.
the better it burns. Yeah.
So I would encourage anyone to take challenges, to challenge yourself, to look at it in a positive way. And even if it's difficult, to keep on going. And I tell you, I've been doing it for a few months now regularly, and I feel a huge difference. It's getting much easier. I'm getting better at it, and I can see great strides of progress in my language learning.
That's great. Do you ever find it challenging to motivate yourself when it comes to study time? And if so, how do you overcome that?
Well, I guess no, no, I don't have difficulties with motivation. I guess it's my character. It's like it's difficult for me I'm the kind of person that is very wavering. Shall I do this or that? And it takes me some time to make a decision. But once I set a goal, and at the moment I have set this goal, I work at it every day, every single day. And it's like I want to do it, especially because all these exercises and all these mistakes I do, they challenge me even more. So I'm just like, my mindset is that I cannot waste a day without moving forward and making the mistakes I do every day, but learning them and not making them again. So once the goal is there, I'm just like a bulldozer.
Ah, yes. It's like once you make a decision, you become driven about it.
Yeah, I'm just now crazy about it. And every spare moment I have, I do these exercises. I learn these mistakes that I make. I keep repeating it, learning it, reviewing, going back, forward. It's really exciting. And it's really been a great pleasure for me. And I can see that I have moved up to quite a bit, because it really is quite difficult.
All right, fantastic.
And it takes effort. But I think the results will be worth it.
Yeah, I think I can relate a little bit in terms of that. I don't think I'm quite as intense as that, but I think I am similar in terms of I can either do something at like 80 miles per hour, or I don't do it at all. That's the way I work. So either I'm really into it and I'm doing it a lot, or I'm not doing it at all. And people see that and they're like, "Oh, Rich, you have such strong willpower and you're so organized and stuff." Actually, that's not the case at all. It's only the case when it's this specific thing that I've become semi-obsessed about.
But you see, what I want to add here is that I understand, let's say, I'm not like that with German. I've been learning German off and on for a few years now. And I just go through these stages when I also do it every day. I'm super excited. Then I stop. And now I haven't done it for a few months. I go up and down. And I'm thinking, why is like that? I can say that one thing that really helps is having a concrete goal. When you have a goal, and when you have a plan, and when you have a strategy, and when you know what you want to do and how you want to do it, and you consider the best ways of doing it. With German, for me, it's just, well, I'm just learning it just because I'm learning it. I have no goals, and that's why my motivation is lacking there. So I think the most important is to have a goal, why, and time limit, and strategy.
I mean, I think all of those things are definitely important. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think there are other factors as well, though. There is kind of just your innate enjoyment of it, which can be affected by numerous
honestly,
things.
I don't enjoy German so much, and I mean, I do enjoy it. I like it as a language, but at the moment, my priority is the C2 exam, and I cannot juggle both. You see, so I've chosen to stop learning German at the moment because all my energy and all my mental energy has to be directed in English.
Yeah, I mean, I experimented a little bit with German, and I really enjoyed the pronunciation. I thought it was so fun, the pronunciation and the accent. But the prepositions just drove me insane in German, and the fact that they conjugate nouns as well. I also found that it's like if you want to say
grammar is quite difficult.
If you want to say cat, it could be Katze, Katzen, Katzeren. There's like all these different ways of saying it, you know. All right.
Yeah. So So I can say that you see, it's not like it's easy to people should understand that you don't have this permanent level of motivation about everything. I guess English is my passion, and when it comes to English, I have found out that I have no problem with motivation. Actually, I was doing my exercises and I just saw that you were streaming, so I jumped in. But in other things, it's more difficult. It's more difficult to find motivation. So afterwards, I'll be thinking with the German what goals I have, why am I studying it, what for, etc., and set some goals probably.
Yeah. If you don't have those goals, it's almost impossible to motivate yourself, isn't it? All right. Well, it's great talking to you again, Zoya. I hope you have a lovely.
Talking to you. Have a great time. Have a good day, and thank you for coming back. And I'm so excited that you're streaming again, and I'm always in there. Thank you, Rich. Thank you.
All right, Zoya.
Bye.
Have a lovely day. See you again. All right. Great. So Google Meet seems to work more or less, kind of. We sort of found a system that can work here. That's good, isn't it? All right, everybody. Well, it was great chatting to you today about the differences between real English and textbook English. I've got a little bit of time for some questions. If you've got any questions on your mind right now, you can fire those in the chat, particularly if they're questions which are related to the things that we've been talking about today. And I'll do my best to answer those as an educator. As teachers of language, we are particularly the kind of teachers who are always learning. I think really all teachers are always learning because, you know, if you were the perfect teacher, then you would be able to motivate, encourage, and instruct your students in such a way that they would be able to learn things absolutely perfectly. And of course, no teacher is actually like that. We do our best to basically optimize our results, but you never get to the point of being perfect. One of the things why teaching is so interesting to me is that I find it challenging and interesting to look into and find out and then practice how to improve results as a teacher all the time, and able to basically do better for students and experiment with all these different ways of people learning, essentially. And as language teachers, more so than anything, hopefully now that we're in the age of AI and people now have headphones that can translate on the spot and all kinds of things like that, hopefully language teaching will remain being an important element of our lives, because of course there's just no substitute for improving your own mind, is there? I mean, if you're going to learn how to ride a horse, you know, that's really a fantastic skill. That's really a great deal of fun and can do all kinds of great things with it. And someone might say, well, you can just drive a car, you know, you don't need to ride a horse. And it's like, yeah, well, that's not quite the idea, is it? You can drive a car, you can take a train, you can do all kinds of stuff to get you from A to B. But one of those is really an interesting and admirable skill that improves you as a person. And the other one is a pragmatic tool, which can be quite useful to just very quickly get a result. And the question is life all about results, or is it about the process and the journey? And I think particularly for me, the older that I get, the more I find myself turning towards the journey, because I think really that is what we have to focus on. For pretty much everyone, the material aspect of life is going to end the same way. So that will be the final result. So then what happens on the journey and what is the process all about? That's really the adventure of what we're doing while we're here, aren't we? So Pavia says, have you ever noticed how people get confused between reluctant and reticent? I wonder why that is. Reluctant and reticent. Yeah, I wonder. Well, actually, I can relate to that, Pavia. I think I'm a little bit confused myself. Reluctant and reticent, they're pretty similar, aren't they? I'm reluctant to say. I'm reticent to agree. Yeah, reticent sounds a little bit more peculiar. I don't know if people use reticent quite as much as reluctant. So apparently the definition of reticent is not revealing one's thoughts or feelings readily. That's the actual dictionary definition. Although I have to say, I think that people do use it kind of a little bit more generally than that. So maybe that's where the confusion comes in between reluctant and reticent. She was reticent to say, because people will say that. They'll say like, oh, she was reticent to say. And I suppose, yeah, that is not revealing your thoughts or feelings, isn't it? If you're reticent to say something. But it is quite similar, isn't it, to someone saying, well, I'm reluctant to say it as well. Ibrahim in the chat saying hello. Hello there, Ibrahim. How are you doing, sir? I hope things are good with you. It's a nice profile picture you've got there. You're playing football. Manuel says, I'm inclined to say similar things to Pavia. And we've got a little comment from Vitelli here saying, paraphrasing, it's too much of a juggling act to handle that many things at the same time. Once I've made a decision, nothing's going to stop me. I love those phrases. Don't quite can't quite see where the paraphrasing comes in, but interesting. Are you paraphrasing the examples that I had on the screen before? Pavia says, don't you think my pronunciation's got worse over the past month? I'm actually quite upset about it. Oh, Pavia, don't worry about that. I don't think your pronunciation's got worse at all. I think your pronunciation's fine. I think the problem we were having on the call was that there was a lot of echo wherever you are. So you're obviously in a room with solid walls and solid floors. So there was a lot of echo, and that made it a little bit more difficult to understand what you were saying. The solution to that is just get your microphone really close to your mouth like this, and then that stops the echo. But you have to get close to the mic, and it'll stop the echo. You should definitely not stress about your pronunciation. I don't think there's any problem with your pronunciation at all. One thing I might say, Pavia, is I think that you sounded a bit more fluent than you normally were. I mean, in the past when we used to do those recorded homeworks, you kind of really British. You really went for the kind of British accent, and it was well considered and sounded very interesting. But in natural conversation, it's normal that your English will be a little bit less self-conscious. So, you're just having a fluent conversation. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And people will notice that with me as well, that when I speak more naturally, certain aspects of my accent come out. Like I don't always use the correct RP pronunciation for things. I do try to, because as an English teacher, I think most of the time students do appreciate it when they have a teacher who's teaching them a standard of English. And so I do in general veer towards the received pronunciation. However, you will notice that when I'm speaking naturally, occasionally things don't quite come out like that. Like instead of come, I might say come. And instead of but, I might say but. Instead of must, I might say must, right? Because that's my natural accent. I was born in the north of England, and in the north of England, we say oh instead of And also for words like put, the correct pronunciation put, but in the north of England they say put it down instead of put it down. So, you know, that's just one of those things, isn't it? We all have a kind of range of the ways that we say things and the pronunciation that we use, and it's contextual. The idea that one person speaks the same way in every situation, that's just not reality. So I don't think we should worry about it too much. The focus should always be on communication. Do I understand? Am I understood? And fluency. Right, everybody, it's been my pleasure. My name is Professor Rich. Why don't you just take a little moment now to smash that like button? And if you haven't subscribed, then now's a great time to do that. I will catch you guys again at some point. Who knows, might have another surprise stream at some point. I'm feeling a little bit energetic this week, so maybe we'll have another one of these, but we'll see how it goes. Just keep your eyes out. And it was great to kind of grab you all, considering we didn't really plan this. We just popped up today, and here we are. So have a lovely day, everybody. My name's been Professor Rich, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now.